So I'll call the open board meeting of Tuesday, January 9th, 2018 to order. And just to let trustees know that Trustee Hutchins may not be able to attend this evening. He's going to try, but there is a family medical piece that he's dealing with. So we respectfully acknowledge that we are meeting on the traditional and ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, where we live, learn, and play. Motion to adopt the agenda, moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to minutes of December 5th, 2017, open board meeting. Motion to adopt, moved by Trustee DeGroot, seconded by Trustee Doman. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to minutes of special open board meeting on December 20th, moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Doman. All those in favor, motion carries. Recognition and delegations, report of closed meetings. Mr. Sen?
Thank you. Prior to this meeting, the board discussed a personnel and facility item. They did not conclude their business, so we'll reconvene at the end of the open meeting today.
Thank you. Moving to old business. The first is the board performance review, and you could recall that at the last meeting we talked about developing a growth plan. I have talked to Mike Roberts first at BCSDA, who said they would be happy to support us, and gave me the names of Hugh Blackman, who has taken over from Gayla Erickson as their Director of Staff Development, and Gordon Como. So, talked to Hugh first, and I thought his ideas might be really exciting for us, and that is for us to, first of all, develop our board legacy. So what have been our successes as part of this process, and then look at, and where do we see the future plans or the growth plan. He also liked the idea of including Gordon Como, because Gordon has a history working with us with our performance review. So at this point, they have both accepted to work with us on this development. Now, I looked at the calendar, and my suggestion is that we use board planning time for this, rather than try to build in yet another meeting. We have a lot going on with policy review, so I am going to suggest that we change our February board planning date from February 15th to the next Thursday, which is February 22nd, and we go from 4 to 7. Does that work with people? I know Jason is not here.
I can.
Well, you can be?
I can come back.
Oh, how wonderful, but it's up to you. BC ASBO is also an important piece in your life and the district's life. So
What day are you saying?
it's Thursday, February 22nd. From 4 to 7, that gives us 3 straight hours. Trustee Croft?
I actually am working that evening, but I might be able to make arrangements to not be, so I actually have to get back to you on that. Yeah.
Not great. Friday, February 22nd?
These people don't expect me to show up.
And our superintendent may be called. Oh, me too? Okay.
Looks like board chairs, secretary treasurers, February 22nd, partner liaison meetings. Just getting heads up to hold the date for that.
Okay. Could we ask our favorite EA, Gina, to coordinate or when? Because obviously that date is probably not going to work.
So
Finally, one that worked with me.
Trustee Doman?
Is 3 hours going to be enough for this?
They seem to be okay with that amount of time. Our planning, where we did the self-evaluation summary, says that our governance board is operating at a positive, effective level, and here are some topics. for us to think about as we move forward, and many of them we've already completed. So hopefully the 3 hours of sustained time will work for us. Okay, so we'll get back to you on when that's to happen. Trustee DeGroote.
When are we getting together to put together our legacy before we get to that meeting?
We needn't do that, but you will get some homework for it. Thank you. Thank you for asking, Trustee DeGroote. Okay, moving to item B, action list. Most of it is policy. Mr. Santos.
3 policy items on the action list will begin to be addressed this Sunday. And policy consultant Leroy Sloan comes to the district to begin work with the board on revision and updates of the board's policy manual.
Thank you. So please make sure you have this Sunday in your calendar, 8 a.m. apparently, till 4 p.m. here in your favorite spot. So, okay, thank you. Anything else?
Deal with those action items?
Certainly.
Can we move them?
Superintendent, okay. It looks like all of the rest on the action list then are done. Good job, whoever did that, all right. Superintendent of schools, Mr. Allen, please.
I'm sticking with that good job thing. Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems not a large number of school days ago that we last met. I know there was a period of time, but not a large number of school days since we last met. A couple of things to bring to your attention around the district that you might find of interest or want to attend. Find Your Fit, which is it's been to this district before. It's put on by the ITA, and it's an opportunity for our students to interact with a number of displays and interactive activities around helping them think about what future careers they might want to have. If you're really good at these kinds of things, these are the kinds of skills required in this trade or in this kind of profession. It will be at in the Quamachin Gym on January the 23rd, all day. Kids will be going through it. We're just making the schedule now through Larry Matten. So I can't tell you what schools will be there at what times, but available for secondary kids, and we're hoping down into grades 5 and 6 as well. It's pretty cool. It takes over the whole gym. It's an opportunity for you to go and try your hand at a variety of skill testing events as well, and see how you stack up against a grade 5 kid.
That would be humbling. That would be humbling, yes.
January 19th and 20th, we have the Vancouver Island Learning Network, which, as you know, we host courtesy of Glenn Posey and our tech folks. It's our second meeting there. It's focused on coding and the ADST, Applied Design and Skills curriculum, Skills and Design curriculum. We are hosting it in Nanaimo because it's for the whole island, and it's the second one that's hosted. We have, I think, I'm looking at Cheryl, 130 registrants already, which is awesome. The ministry is looking hard at it as a model for use elsewhere in the province, as a way of a district supporting a regional learning network around ADST. So that's happening in Nanaimo on January 19th and 20th, which is a Friday evening and a Saturday. And if you're interested in popping in or attending, let me know. We have a curriculum support day on January the 15th. That's Monday. A whole variety of activities are happening with teachers in grade groups, working in our schools. They're all coming in centrally and then sort of redistributing into grade groups and a couple of interest groups. Looking at the curriculum, looking at especially around the competencies and how we are thinking about integrating those into our work. Cheryl, anything you want to add to that? And it's happening in schools in the central zone. Folks are coming in for the day.
I'm sorry, I just missed the date on that.
That's January 15th.
Thank you.
And January the 18th, Shelley Moore is with us for the afternoon for the first of her visits.
Full day,
Full day?
2 separate sessions, one in the afternoon.
Bad intel. Shelley's here for the full day. And Shelley, as you know, works provincially and now nationally and internationally on inclusion and how we think about inclusion. Highly sought after speaker and presenter and workshop giver. So having Shelley here not just to present, but to actually begin working with our folks in schools on inclusion. So again, if you are around and have time on the 18th and are interested in stopping in and seeing some of Shelley at work with our folks, you'd be welcome to do that.
Could you just tell us the location?
The annex.
That's actually at the Duncan Community Lodge, as of today.
Okay,
Old
thank you.
news.
Annex is too small.
All right, and that's the Moose Hall, right?
Mhm.
Right. For those of you that know it by its old name. Youth Work and Trades Grants, you probably saw some tweets coming out before Christmas. In December, we gave out $7,000 to work and trade students. And had some folks up from the ministry to give out some of those checks. Thank you, Gina. There you'll see some smiling and happy kids getting $1,000 each for participating in a variety of things, and this is just pictures of a couple of the kids. So it's a great opportunity. There's more to come, and we will have a larger event that we will, with a bit more warning from ITA when they're coming to do some further presentations in the spring where we have a larger group of kids. So it's a great opportunity for kids to see some real cash back for their efforts. Rogers Hometown Hockey is in the Cowichan Valley, January 20th and 21st. I'm sure Trustee Schmidt didn't know anything about that. 5 of our schools will be sending students to participate in skating and entertainment and eating events. As well, leading up to that, Joseph Boudreau, Chris Clark, and Grant Mellumstrand held a floor hockey tournament at George Bonner. 21 teams from 12 elementary schools participated before Christmas. The top 2 teams in each of the age groups participate in the Tim Hortons Outdoor Ball Rink on January 20th. So kind of a big event for those kids to go play some primetime ball hockey. And Maple Bay Elementary grade 5-6 class used design thinking processes to support some other folks in need. The grade 5-6 class at Maple Bay raised $800 to help support a community in need using design thinking, providing solutions, testing, prototyping, ideating, etc. They analyzed what there are needs in the world and different ways to support people in need, and they looked into different options to decide on one cause to raise money for. In the end, they decided to support Save the Children, and they planned how they would raise money through bookmark sales, etc. And building kits that include goats, not enough money to buy a farm kit for a family. The kit includes goats, sheep, chicks. They're not sending animals out. And mosquito netting. So it's a great example of using design thinking in really practical ways. We're hoping that in the February board meeting we'll have one of the design challenge groups from Seabulk come and present their community challenge, which again is using design thinking practices. So you're starting to see that there will be no goats here next week.
Oh.
Little boxes?
Little tiny boxes with little tiny goats in them. And if you probably saw before Christmas, again, it was all over Twitter and social media. Darcy Zibin with kids from Mount Provo were using design thinking processes to design things for the cat hospital, and they donated those things. So they designed them, went through the design thinking process, constructed them, and then donated them to the cat shelter, which is kind of cool. Our kids finding meaningful, real work to do in community. It's always an excellent thing. For board action,
No, sorry.
okay, just scratching. For board action, we have a student travel piece for you not to approve in principle. You've already done that for final approval, which is a field trip by our international students to Cuba in March. To Veradero. They have met all the requirements in our handbook, and I would recommend the board providing final approval for their field trip to Veradero.
Thank you. Moved by trustee Schmidt, seconded by trustee Dolman. Any conversation? All those in favor? Motion carries.
Moving to item 8, Secretary Treasurer, Mr. Singles.
Thank you. I have quite a few items this evening. So we'll start with BC Summer Games update. Not a lot to update to provide. The BC Summer Games Society are enjoying Duncan Primary, and I know we're meeting in there frequently. And our staff, particularly led by Director of Operations Monroe Grove, is about to begin the communication with our schools as far as the implications of the having the games as far as on the classroom space. So I know we'll be in communication with the principal shortly on what that's going to look like. And now we have a lot of financial information. I'm going to actually move up here where I can point things out on the new screens, and I realize now that I need to start making documents landscape instead of portrait, because it's now long, not tall. The first one we have is the estimated changes in the operating grant. So funding came in December, and I'm going to walk you through basically the changes from where we thought we were last March when we got our preliminary grant. And it's still an estimate. We still have the February and May counts to come, but the majority of the board's funding does come off the students that are here in September. So the projected grant last May was roughly to receive about $55.5 million out of our enrollment. And in September, so our student numbers went up. So we went up from 7,260 to 7,411, and et cetera, et cetera. So we're up about $1.2 million on the operating grant. Now the reason for that is a lot of the dual credit and distributed learning count were counted in September. In the past, in years when we were in funding protection, we counted those students in February and May. So it's a little bit earlier count on students that we may have typically counted later on in the year. Then scrolling up, if you look at our unique student needs, you can see the differences of our new special needs levels. So we went up quite a bit in level 2 from what we thought we would, down a little bit in level 3, up in Aboriginal education, so students receiving a program of studies. So overall, that figure is up by $263,000. So those are two good news items on the grant announcement. And one that we were wondering about was salary differential. So this number here. What salary differential is boards are compensated for the difference between your average teacher's salary and the lowest in the province. So what happened is this board, given the classroom enhance, or given the reintroduction of Bill 28, the language, the memorandum of agreement, likely hired more teachers as a percentage of staff than many other school districts in the province. When you hire new teachers, your average teacher salary drops because they're on a 10-step compensation grid. So what happened is the average teacher salaries in the district dropped to where we're almost at the provincial average. We were quite a bit above before. So the grant now goes down by about $500,000. There's also savings in the actual teacher costs, which I'll show you on another portion of this slide. So overall, the September count is bringing about $993,000 of new money that wasn't anticipated last March to the board. We left February and May relatively, well actually exactly the same in discussions with our district principal of PL and careers and dual credit. We think that we're still on target for those two counts, but we've exceeded those targets in February and May in past budgets. So at this point, I think we're going to be pretty close to those two counts because those students are now up in the September numbers. So overall, $993,000 up. So I wanted to show you that. The next item here is on the Classroom Enhancement Fund. So, yeah, we can use that one. So, we had originally received $409,000 for overhead component of the Classroom Enhancement Fund. And we went back to the ministry on October 20th and indicated that that didn't reflect the board's actual costs. So we actually applied for $1,254,000, but they gave us $954,000. So it's still really, really good news, but it's not exactly what the total costs are for the district for the overhead component of implementing the teachers' collective agreement. Now, we do have an opportunity to go back to them in February. Again, so, and we will do that, but at this point we were able to add to it additional custodial time. So we've been able to address the needs of the new portables, so we will be able to address the needs of the new portables by introducing some new custodians. So that's something that we had been talking about and we're waiting to do until we receive funding. The itinerant clerical position has now been filled, so that is now, there's actually somebody in that position actively working, so that is now done. But the big piece was we were able to move just over 10 education assistants into that fund. We were able to demonstrate that we needed to do a lot of our additional hiring this year as a result of the collective agreement language. So where in the past, students with common designations could be put together in a classroom to combine services, we're able to do that now with the new language. So they did accept that, and we've now taken $509,000 out of the operating budget and moved it over to the Classroom Enhancement Fund. So that's a significant piece of this. So we're still down at around $32,000 on the furniture, and I think that's one of the pieces that they're going to allow us to readdress in February. Because we know we spent almost about $130,000 on equipping the new classrooms. But the board had $100,000 set aside out of the prior year's surplus because we knew that wasn't going to be enough. Okay, so next item, moving through this quickly, is to look at where the budget is at today. The board is required to adopt an amended budget by February 28th. So we'll be bringing you a budget package at the February board meeting. So what I can show you is you saw this number earlier, $993,000 that's come in from the operating grant. That was the very first number that I had up there. What we're looking at is the budget that was adopted in May as to where we think it is today. And we're looking at the revenue piece up here first. So some other new revenue was, there was a new benefit plan for QP and steelworkers that was implemented in September. We weren't expecting to receive any funding for that, and then it arrived. So we picked up another $103,000 there. On the provincial grants other, that is the ITA, so that's the Industry Training Authority. It's up a little bit from where we were, at least this is an actual amount. Tuition continuing ed, that's a cohort going through the education system. I think it is. I think that's the EA cohort where we've been paid for some of the students and we're now paying the entire bill for the education assistant cohort going through the dual credit program. Left the tuition for international out of province students the same, as well as the most of the other fees there. Miscellaneous revenues, those come if you sell a school bus or equipment or some random grant comes in, so we had some funding there. We've dropped our rentals and leases by $15,000. We don't think they'll be quite as high this year. Now we may pick some of that up through a couple of the rentals that are anticipated on the Couch and Place property, but will still need to be secured. But we think our investment revenue will be up by about $15,000. We're doing a little bit better on the account there. We have more money sitting with the Ministry of Finance this year than we did in prior years. So overall, I think the revenue is up by $1.26 million. And we can move to the expenditure slide. So under expenditures, you can see that this is just the operating budget. So we have increased the teachers that have been required, and that was due to enrollment growth, so over what we thought we would have. So all the new teachers aren't funded from Classroom Enhancement Fund. Some of them are here because their student numbers just grew and we needed them because of costs. But overall, that number, even though we've been up by 4.5 FTE, we're down by $392,000. So that's part of that average teacher salary savings coming in. So we lost some of our grant, we lost about $500,000 in the grant, but we saved likely close to $1 million on actual costs on our teacher salaries. Principals, vice principals, it's up a bit there. So some of that was increases that were approved by BCPC and the board in July 1st of this year. That's partly why that's up, and it's up a little bit in FTE. There was another position put in at Maple Bay Elementary after the original budget was adopted, a vice principalship. Education assistants, up now it's $687,000, so we were able to move $500,000 over. So that figure before was about 1.1 million, so that's significantly less pressure on the operating budget than we previously identified. Support staff increase $73,000. That's a 4-hour clerical position at Discovery / George Bonner, and it's running the school bus back and forth between the dual campus on the corridor out here. Other professionals, that relates to the 1.35% increase that came in July 1st. So overall, our salaries are about $873,000 up. Part of the difference in the substitutes here is our rollover amounts from the prior year. They get reintroduced into the budget after we do our year end. So you file your annual budget in March or in April, really the end of April. But when we have our year end, some of the items that we need to restrict get them brought into the budget. Benefits are down. They're down because medical service plan premiums are half now from January 1st forward. So even though our expenses are up on wages, our benefit costs are down. Scroll here a bit more under services, having brought in so much revenue for the dual credit program, we also need to up the tuition fee. Typically we have about a 30% margin there. So we'll have bills that go with that revenue that I've shown you on the first slide for revenue. So that's up by about $500,000. Some minor adjustments throughout here. Big one on supplies. That's the rollover of the prior year's learning resources. That's the rollover of the $50 per student learning grant. So there was, I think, almost $380,000 of that was left over from student learning grant from the prior year, which now has to come into this budget. So when we do all that, and we now reduce our, I took the liberty of increasing the reduction of unfunded teacher benefits to $50,000, should you wish to consider that. As we're getting closer to paying down that bill, we likely have 2 or 3 years left on it. We've also had a little bit of overage on a couple of school buses that we ordered that had lifts installed in the back of them, so the province didn't support the lift, the student lift. So we had to find additional funding for some of the new school buses that were purchased, so we put that figure in here. So what it is requiring is that we use $2.3 million of the $4 million that was left over from the prior year to balance this year's budget. So that's actually an improved position from where we were at year end. So at year end, what was remaining was $1,254,000. What's currently remaining in this budget is $1,693,000. Okay. So the next step is we have some recommendations before we bring back the budget of things that we would like to consider within those funds when we bring them in the budget back to you at the first part of February. So again, there's what's left over. First item is new teacher mentorship program, and I'll let the superintendent talk to you a bit about that.
Thanks, Jason. As you know, over the course of this year, we have hired a large number of brand new teachers. We are in a position that's not typical for this district, where we have teachers now in our schools that haven't spent a day as a TTOC even. They're just in and hired. So that's a great opportunity for us. However, they're not veteran teachers. And so we believe, and we're making the request for the rest of this year, and we'll talk about it in budget season, whether it needs to extend another year. We sort of have a once in a generation opportunity to work with a bunch of brand new teachers and really help them get ready to be in this profession for a long period of time. We know that provincially the statistics are that 20% of teachers who get a teaching certificate never teach, and a further 20% leave within the first 5 years. we don't want 20% of our folks, of our new teachers leaving in the first 5 years. We need to help them drink from that fire hose, which is what it's like being a classroom teacher. And so asking for some money to have a teacher mentorship or a teacher induction program that is not off the corner of someone's desk, but is a bit more full-time for someone for the next, certainly for the rest of this year, and then we'll see how that goes. But I would imagine for the next year or two, while this hiring is going on.
Next item that we have here that we would like to be considered in the amended budget is the replacement of the bus hoist in the transportation garage. So we spoke to the board a bit about that earlier and gave you a heads up that it's no longer functioning and it is very, very, very old. It requires the purchase of the hoist as well as a new, in order to facilitate the hoist, a new pit construction. So the estimate is around $100,000 for that. We're recommending utilizing operating funding rather than local capital. Local capital is not an infinite source of funding. It's a fund that is rejuvenated or replenished upon sale of properties. And it seems that most of our surplus properties are now in use or potentially could be in use, may not be replenished. So that is based on a number of quotations where we've gone out and sort of shopped around, looked for the best fit for the district. It's certainly not the most expensive option, but it's also, I think, not the most least expensive option. It's the most appropriate option for the work they want to do on the buses. It allows the bus to be picked up from two ends at one single lift. Other item I have on here is the increase of teacher sick leave replacement. So what's happened this year is a continuation of the previous year's absenteeism cost. So not necessarily the number of days that somebody uses, but the cost of those days. So it depends on the number of people, where you are on your scale and whether you're on scale. Right now, as we run our projections, it looks like our teachers are going to be over. Now, our other groups, not the case, so I'll show you that when we get to the next document. But we believe that we are likely underfunded on the classroom enhancement fund on the teacher absenteeism, and we're likely don't have enough money in the operating budget. So we're suggesting a $200,000 increase to cover those. And I think without that, we would likely have a budget, that component budget line would be in deficit at the end of the year if the pattern continues. So the last year we spent just under $2 million on absenteeism replacement for the operating budget component. This year it's looking like that trend is continuing. Previous 3 years were about 1.6 million. So we saw quite a shift last year, and that's still continuing. Now, it over years, it's not something that's necessarily predictable, the absenteeism rates. It just sort of rides a wave. Sometimes you're high, sometimes you're low. And this is one of the years where it looks like we've had a rough fall with flu season. Then the last item that we have on here in our recommendations to bring to you in February is increase of technology funding to support student devices. We've just acquired 1,200 new student devices to replace a number that are going out of service. Those 1,200 devices have put a fair amount of pressure on the technology budget. It's not exhausted, but it's certainly becoming very, very close to exhausted for the year. So this would allow for contingency, really a contingency line item should we have any issues that come up.
Thank you. Trustee Ishii.
Is this the point where we're going to move the recommendations?
Could I ask?
Yes.
So move the recommendations.
Okay. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Thorne. Any conversation from trustees? Call for the motion. All those in favor? Motion carries.
Okay, so that still leaves you with 1.283 surplus. Next item, we'll go through this one, try to listen relatively quickly.
It just never happens. We don't hear those numbers. It's exciting.
So here we are. What we do is we look at our amended budget. And this is the budget without the items that we just talked about. and we have our year-to-date balances, and what we do is we run projections on those areas of the budget. So as we've adjusted the budget for the new funding, it's showing that our provincial grant is not going to have a surplus. So we've already incorporated all of those new revenues, is what I'm letting you know here. So right now we're a little bit under on our international student program tuition. But these other two items that you see that are positive, those are also related to the international student program. So overall, we're roughly pretty close to budget on our revenues. And this is bringing in the $2.3 million in surplus that you saw before. So if we could scroll up a little bit. So our projections on principals and vice principal salaries are that we'll just there's a contingency built in here for potential increases should PSEC or BCPC allow those for principals to start moving within their own grid structure. They're all currently at step 0. So there is money that's not being reflected in that $29,000 that's set aside and soon to be spent. So that number could be a higher surplus than what you see there. Teacher salaries are coming in $168,000 under budget. Education assistants, $13,000 under budget. There's a contingency in there that we're considering will be spent in the second semester, as we always have positions that we have to hold back because students arrive that are identified throughout the year, and we have to introduce services. Clerical, just very, very close to budget, just over by $13,000. USW salaries, $22,000 surplus. Excluded salaries, $2,000 surplus. Casual replacement. This is where I mentioned that the other groups have some surplus in them right now, and it's kind of balancing off the teachers at the moment, but I don't know if we can bank on that continuing. So right now, QP and steelworkers have had very positive absenteeism, but part of that has been the challenge with filling EA positions on days when people are ill. We haven't always had a replacement cost for those. So we're getting better and better at having our roster of casuals complete, and I know that those expenses will start to come as we're able to fill those absences. Currently, we've only spent $151,000 of the $830 available, so there will likely be some surplus there in the in-service department head account at the end of the year. A big piece of that is the BC Ed plan. Okay, so right now, but we have to assume that the opportunity is there for schools that have been distributed those budgets to spend them, but at some point, it becomes impossible due to the availability of TTOCs and the time frame left in the rest of the year. Because we haven't had a full payroll yet in January, when we have employees back on benefits, we just assume them all to be on track. If we're on track on our wages and benefits, we should be on track with our employee benefits. So overall, that's about $70 million of budget, which we were looking at about $225,000 surplus on. So we're still pretty close on our wage costs. Down here, we just assume that we're going to spend all of our services, transportation fees, et cetera, insurance, supplies, but our utilities are looking very good at the moment. It was quite warm through some of the earlier months as compared to the last year.
Don't say it, Jason.
Don't say it. Approved the budget before. But our projection right now is to see a bit of surplus on some of those accounts. So on the budget, there's potential for $404,000 in additional surplus to be generated in the current projection.
Nice. Thank you very much for taking us through an immense amount of budgeting, which we hope we all understand to the depth. Thank you for being so clear with it.
Okay, moving back to the agenda, we're on committees and outside organizations. A is trustee appointments, and you have the organizations and schools before you. No change, basically. No change on schools, and one minor change on organizations, where Trustee Schmidt is now the alternate for BCPC, and that is it. Moving to item B, which is minutes of the November 16, 2017 DPAC meeting. Trustee Croft.
I would like to move that the Board of Education, School District 79, Cowichan Valley, receive the minutes of the November 16, 2016 DPAC meeting.
Thank you. Moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carries. Moving to item C, highlights of the December 13, 2017 DSAC meeting. Trustee Schmidt.
I move that the Board of Education ST 79 receives the highlights from the December 13th, 2017.
Thank you. Moved by Trustee Schmidt, seconded by Trustee Croft. All those in favor, motion carries. Moving to upcoming meetings and events on page 30. Any additions or not? One thing I'd like to comment on is the presentation of our strategic priorities to the city of Duncan on January 22nd. And I would hope that other trustees would be able to accompany me. Thank you, 6 o'clock in the city of Duncan. The other thing I don't see here is the January 14th, this Sunday, the policy committee meeting here from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Anything else on the schedule of meetings? Okay, moving to correspondence, none. Moving to new business, the funding formula review and the guiding principles are attached on the agenda here, page 31. And we have been requested as a board to give any feedback on these principles. As you know, the Ministry of Education, working with BCPC, BCSDA, are working, and others, probably Superintendent's Association, etc., are working through a new funding formula. So this is the first document we've seen, and this sets out the purpose. Is there anything from our board that we would like to send in as our response? Trustee Croft?
It seems very positive. Seems like a good start.
Thank you. Any further comments? Okay, thank you. I shall send our positive response in. Okay, moving to question period. Is there anyone in the audience? Chris?
In relation to the teacher mentoring program, the new teacher mentoring program, just wanted to bring to attention that BCTF has a very successful one that they work with districts. There is a cost share involved in it, and I can bring you some more information should you wish, but it's something that has worked really well in other districts. It helps teachers that are choosing to be mentors and teachers that are choosing to be mentees work together, and it helps support and helps train. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. It is a good program, and we've used it in the past. So, anyone else wish to ask a question at this time? Okay, moving to adjournment. Moved by Trustee Griggs, seconded by Trustee Bennett. All those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. We have
See you.
minutes.